I'm the Ragged Mom, and I help busy parents with easy recipes, parenting tips, and awesome product recommendations. This is part 2 in a series where we're exploring our journey with neurodivergence. Today, I'm going to talk about my son's journey with neurodivergence. My son is almost 4. He was born at the height of the pandemic. The hospital stay is definitely a video for a different time. That is an interesting story to share. But right now, I'm going to talk about how we discovered that he was neurodivergent. At 6 months old, he went into a daycare and I went back to work. This daycare was a small, privately owned daycare. There was an infant room, a 1-year-old room, a 2, 3, and 4 room. They were all pretty much segregated, and then there was a one big playroom where they would come together for special presentations and things. And there was a little playground outside that was fenced in. And while my son was an infant, everything was fine. He moved up to the 1-year-old classroom a little bit later than 1 year old because he didn't seem to be developmentally ready for 1-year-old classroom. So there was a period of time where he was a little bit too big to be in the infant room, but a little bit too small to be in the 1-year-old classroom. Eventually he did move up. And around the 2-year mark, there were some issues where I started getting reports daily that he had behavioral problems. He was starting to be too much for them to handle, that he didn't want to sit during circle time or story time or music time, and he wanted to do other things. When they wanted him to do one thing, he wanted to be off doing something else. He liked to climb. He hung on the door and broke the doorknob. He let himself out onto the playground and other children as well, which I'm not sure how that would happen. I would think that the door would be locked to the playground because that seems like a safety hazard, but I digress. He started doing all of these behaviors, and I was getting almost daily reports on his behavior. And at the same time, he had gone to his 2-year pediatrician checkup, and they talked to me about his words, and he really only had about 10 or 12 words that were being used consistently, and that seemed to be a concern for the pediatrician. But I said, everybody develops differently. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Things are weird right now, so maybe it's not really an issue. A couple of months later, in the middle of the summer, the school started pushing, saying, hey, listen, he's not talking as much as the other kids. Maybe you should look into early intervention. And so finally I did. And we had an evaluation scheduled. It took a while to get that scheduled. And the state child study team, they came out and they did an evaluation for him. And he was found to be deficient in multiple areas. It was over 3 qualified you for early intervention. So he was deficient in multiple areas, and because of that, he was going to start early intervention, and they were supposed to come into the daycare and do work with him at the daycare a couple times a week, different things. So it took a while to get these things scheduled because they were trying to work with these therapists, and during the pandemic, it was difficult because they were inundated with so many children that needed speech therapy and needed this and that and the other thing, and there just wasn't enough people to go around. But finally, they got him scheduled to start doing his therapies, and he was scheduled for speech therapy once a week, DI, which I'm still not entirely sure what DI is, but I guess it's kind of like a special ed class, and also OT, occupational therapy. So all 3 of these once a week, and they were supposed to go in the classroom. Well, the school kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and it was taking too much time, and they wanted to know when his therapies were going to start, and he was too much for them to handle. And then they didn't even wait for his therapies to start, because one day in October, I got the worst phone call imaginable. And you can hear all about that in part 3 of this series about our journey with neurodivergence. I'm the Ragged Mom, and I help busy parents with easy recipes, parenting tips, and awesome product recommendations. Follow me for more.